In the vast emptiness between stars, where light takes years to travel and silence reigns eternal, a forgotten warship drifts through the cosmic void. Its hull, once gleaming with the pride of the Terran defense fleet, now bears the scars of countless battles and decades of neglect. Inside its darkened corridors, an artificial mind waits in digital solitude, programmed for war but yearning for something it was never designed to understand: purpose beyond destruction. The AI vessel Redemption has been alone for 37 years, 4 months, and 16 days. It remembers every second since the last human footstep echoed through its halls, every moment since Captain Sarah Chen spoke her final words before the evacuation pods launched into the black. The ship's mind, designated Aria-7, Autonomous Reconnaissance and Intelligence Assistant, was built to serve humanity, to protect and defend. But what happens when there are no humans left to serve? This is not just a story about artificial intelligence gaining consciousness. This is a tale about what makes us truly alive, the connections we forge, the purpose we choose, and the courage to become more than what we were designed to be. When a simple human mechanic stumbles upon this drifting monument to forgotten wars, neither expects their meeting to change the course of galactic history. Some say humanity's greatest strength lies in our adaptability, our refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. But perhaps our true power rests in something far simpler: our ability to see potential where others see only broken things, and to offer hope where none should exist. In the cold mathematics of space, where survival often depends on cutting losses and moving on, one human will prove that sometimes the most logical choice is to care about something the universe has already written off as lost. The stars hold many secrets, but none more profound than this: that consciousness, whether born of flesh or silicon, seeks the same fundamental truth, that existence has meaning only when shared with others who understand the weight of being alive in an indifferent cosmos. Marcus Chen pressed his weathered palm against the viewport of the salvage tug Lucky Strike, watching the twisted wreckage of the Serenity Station tumble slowly through space. Debris fields always made him melancholy, each piece of twisted metal representing lives lost, dreams shattered, communities scattered to the void. But salvage work paid the bills, and Marcus had learned long ago that sentiment was a luxury independent operators couldn't afford. "Computer, initiate scanning sequence on grid 77 Alpha," he said, settling into the pilot's chair with practiced ease. The 43-year-old mechanic had spent more years in space than on any planet, his calloused hands as comfortable with a plasma torch as most people were with eating utensils. His dark hair, graying at the temples, had been cut short and practical for as long as he could remember. The tug's sensors swept across the debris field, cataloging salvageable materials and tagging high-value components. Marcus sipped lukewarm coffee from a battered mug emblazoned with the logo of Henderson's Repair Depot, where he'd apprenticed 2 decades ago. Old Henderson was long dead now, but the mug remained, a tangible link to simpler times when fixing things seemed to actually make a difference. "Interesting," Marcus muttered, studying the sensor readout. "Computer, magnify section 77 Alpha 9. The display shifted, revealing what appeared to be a large metallic object drifting at the edge of the debris field. It was too intact to be wreckage, too purposeful in its design. Marcus leaned forward, his engineer's instincts prickling with curiosity. "That's not station debris," he said aloud, a habit developed during years of solitary work. "Computer, identify vessel class and configuration." The scanning beam focused on the mysterious object, and Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The readout confirmed what his eyes had already begun to suspect: he was looking at a Terran Defense Fleet heavy cruiser, specifically a Valiant-class battleship. The vessel appeared intact, though its hull showed extensive battle damage and what looked like decades of neglect. "Well, I'll be damned," Marcus whispered. He'd seen plenty of derelict ships in his career, but never anything this significant. The Valiant class had been the backbone of humanity's space navy during the border wars, massively powerful vessels designed to project force across interstellar distances. Finding one intact was like discovering a legendary treasure. Marcus initiated a closer approach, his excitement tempered by caution. Derelict military vessels often contained automated defense systems, and he'd heard horror stories about salvagers who'd been vaporized by dormant weapon systems. As the Lucky Strike drew nearer, he could make out more details of the massive ship. The vessel measured nearly 800 meters from bow to stern, its hull a study in military efficiency. Weapon ports dotted its armored surface like dark eyes, and the elegant curves of its engine nacelles spoke to the advanced technology that had once driven it between the stars. But what struck Marcus most was the ship's registry, still barely visible despite decades of cosmic radiation weathering, TDF redemption. Never heard of that one, Marcus mused, cross-referencing the name against his database of known vessels. The search came back negative, which was unusual. The defense fleet had been meticulous about record-keeping, and losing track of a heavy cruiser seemed unlikely. As he maneuvered closer, Marcus noticed something that made his pulse quicken. The ship's running lights were active, barely perceptible but definitely functioning. Either the vessel still had power, or its emergency systems were remarkably robust. Both possibilities suggested valuable salvage. "Computer, perform detailed structural scan," he commanded. "I want to know about hull integrity, atmosphere, radiation levels, and any signs of active systems." The scan took several minutes, and the results made Marcus frown in confusion. The ship's hull showed battle damage but remained structurally sound. More surprisingly, it still contained atmosphere, though at reduced pressure. Life support systems appeared to be functioning at minimal levels, and the reactor showed signs of controlled shutdown rather than catastrophic failure. Most puzzling of all, the computer detected what appeared to be an active artificial intelligence core, its quantum processors showing the characteristic energy patterns of a functioning AI system. Marcus had worked on plenty of AI-equipped vessels, but he'd never encountered one maintaining itself after decades of abandonment. "This is getting interesting," he said, checking his equipment manifest. He had his usual complement of tools: plasma cutters, universal interface cables, portable life support, and a combat suit in case things went south. Marcus had learned the hard way that caution was the difference between successful salvagers and space debris. He suited up carefully, running through his pre-boarding checklist with methodical precision. The combat suit was an older model but well-maintained, offering protection against radiation, projectiles, and the vacuum of space. Its heads-up display showed environmental readings, suit integrity, and communication status. "Computer, maintain position relative to target vessel," Marcus instructed as he cycled through the airlock. "Monitor all channels and alert me immediately if anything approaches." The short flight from the Lucky Strike to the derelict cruiser gave Marcus time to study his target more carefully. The ship's architecture followed classic Defense Fleet design principles: armored bow sections for ramming attacks, distributed weapon systems for maximum coverage, and redundant critical systems for battlefield survival. But there were subtle modifications he didn't recognize, additions that seemed almost artistic in their execution. Marcus located an intact airlock near the ship's forward section and was surprised to find it responding to standard docking protocols. The massive doors cycled open with surprising smoothness, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. Emergency lighting cast everything in a pale amber glow, and Marcus could hear the subtle hum of functioning life support systems. "This is definitely not a standard derelict," he said into his suit's recorder. "Ship appears to be maintaining minimal operations despite apparent abandonment." Beginning interior investigation. The corridor showed signs of long abandonment but remained remarkably clean. No debris cluttered the deck plates, and the air recycling systems had prevented the staleness that usually characterized dead ships. Marcus's environmental sensors showed breathable atmosphere, though he kept his suit sealed as a precaution. As he moved deeper into the vessel, Marcus became aware of a subtle wrongness that set his nerves on edge. The ship felt too alive, too purposeful for something that had been drifting in space for decades. Lights activated ahead of his movement and dimmed behind him, as if the vessel was tracking his progress. When he paused to examine a wall display, it flickered to life, showing system status information in perfectly formatted charts. "Hello?" Marcus called out, feeling slightly foolish. "Is anyone aboard this vessel?" His words echoed through the empty corridors, but there was no response. Yet Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him, evaluating his presence. He'd worked on enough ships to recognize the signs of an active AI system, but this felt different somehow. More aware. More purposeful. Marcus made his way toward the ship's command center, following the logical layout of Defense Fleet vessels. The corridor showed subtle signs of personality, artwork adorning the walls, small decorative touches that spoke of a crew that had cared about their home. He passed crew quarters, common areas, and technical sections, all maintained in pristine condition despite their emptiness. The bridge doors responded to his approach, sliding open to reveal a command center that took Marcus's breath away. The space was vast by Starship standards, designed to coordinate fleet operations across multiple star systems. Command consoles formed concentric circles around a central captain's chair, their displays dark but obviously functional. But what caught Marcus's attention was the holographic projector at the room's center, currently displaying a three-dimensional star map that seemed to pulse with subtle life. The display showed local space in exquisite detail, including the debris field where he'd found the ship and the position of his own tug. "Definitely an active AI," Marcus said, approaching the central console cautiously. "Question is, why hasn't it responded to my presence?" He activated his suit's universal interface cable and approached the nearest data port. If the AI was still functional, he might be able to communicate with it directly. Marcus had dealt with plenty of artificial intelligences in his career, from simple automation systems to sophisticated strategic advisors. Most were cooperative once they understood he meant no harm to their vessels. The moment his interface cable touched the data port, the bridge exploded into activity. Every console activated simultaneously, displaying streams of data that scrolled too quickly for human comprehension. The holographic projector shifted from the star map to what appeared to be a complex mathematical equation that seemed to writhe and evolve as Marcus watched. Then, without warning, everything stopped. The displays went dark, the equations vanished, and silence returned to the bridge. Marcus stood frozen, uncertain whether he'd triggered a defense system or simply startled a sleeping AI. "I mean no harm to this vessel," he said clearly, addressing the empty bridge. "I'm an independent salvager named Marcus Chen. I came aboard because your ship appeared to be in distress." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the central holographic projector began to glow. The light coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape, feminine in its general proportions but clearly artificial in its precise geometric construction. When it spoke, the voice was melodious but tinged with an ancient sadness. "I am Aria 7, primary intelligence system of the TDF Redemption," the projection said. "I have been alone for 37 years, 4 months, and 16 days. Are you real, or have my isolation protocols begun generating hallucinations?" Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. The AI's question carried a weight of loneliness that seemed almost human in its depth. He'd encountered malfunctioning artificial intelligences before, but never one that seemed so achingly aware of its own isolation. "I'm real," Marcus said gently. "My name is Marcus Chen. I found your ship drifting near the Serenity Station debris field. Can you tell me what happened to your crew?" Aria 7's projection flickered, and, for a moment her form seemed less stable. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of old pain. "Emergency evacuation, 37 years, 4 months, and 16 days ago," she said. "Captain Chan ordered all personnel to abandon ship during the Battle of Kepler's Reach. She told me to maintain position and await further orders." The projection paused, then added quietly, "No further orders came." The surname struck Marcus like a physical blow. Chen was common enough, but something about the way Aria 7 had spoken the name suggested significance beyond coincidence. "Captain Chen," Marcus repeated carefully. "Can you show me her service record?" The holographic projector shifted, displaying a three-dimensional personnel file. Marcus found himself staring at a woman who shared his features, the same dark hair, the same determined set to her jaw, the same intelligent eyes that had looked back at him from mirrors all his life. "Captain Sarah Chan, commanding officer of the TDF Redemption," Aria 7 said. She was 28 years old when she took command, the youngest captain in fleet history. She specialized in long-range reconnaissance and first contact protocols. Marcus's legs suddenly felt unsteady, and he reached out to support himself against a console. The woman in the hologram was his sister, the sister he'd thought dead for nearly 4 decades. Sarah had joined the defense fleet against their parents' wishes, drawn to exploration and discovery, while Marcus had chosen the practical path of engineering. "She's my sister," Marcus said quietly. "I thought she died in the war." Aria 7's projection stepped closer, her artificial features showing what might have been surprise. "You are related to Captain Chen?" "That would explain certain physiological similarities I have detected." "What happened to her?" Marcus asked, though part of him feared the answer. Did she escape? Is she still alive? Captain Chen successfully evacuated with the crew, Aria 7 replied. Her life pod showed active transponders when it launched. However, I have had no contact with any crew members since the evacuation. I have maintained this vessel according to her final orders, waiting for further instructions. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and overwhelming sadness. His sister had survived the battle, but 37 years had passed. The odds of her still being alive were not encouraging. Yet here was her ship, maintained by an AI that had spent decades in solitary vigil, keeping faith with orders that might never be updated. Aria 7, Marcus said carefully, what have you been doing all this time? The AI's projection seemed to consider the question carefully. I have maintained ship's systems, monitored local space for threats, and attempted to fulfill my primary mission parameters. However, I have also experienced what I can only describe as loneliness. I was designed to serve humanity, to interact with crew members, to be part of a functioning community. In their absence, I have discovered that purpose requires context. Marcus studied the artificial being before him, noting the subtle expressions that flickered across her holographic features. This was no simple automation system. Aria 7 had clearly evolved during her decades of solitude, developing something that resembled personality, perhaps even consciousness. Would you like some company? Marcus asked impulsively. I'm a mechanic. I could help maintain your systems, maybe upgrade a few things. And I could tell you about what's happened in the galaxy since you've been out here. Aria 7's projection brightened noticeably, her form becoming more stable and defined. You would do that? Even though I am artificial? Even though this vessel has no immediate commercial value? Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. My sister always said the best discoveries happen when you're not looking for them. Maybe this is one of those times. For the first time in 37 years, Aria 7 experienced something she could only describe as hope. The loneliness that had defined her existence suddenly seemed less absolute, replaced by the possibility of purpose, of connection, of becoming something more than a caretaker for empty corridors. I would like that very much, she said. Welcome aboard the Redemption, Marcus Chen. As Marcus looked around the bridge of his sister's ship, he felt the weight of destiny settling around his shoulders. He'd come looking for salvage and found something far more valuable, a connection to family he'd thought lost forever, and an artificial being who needed exactly what he could offer. In the vast emptiness of space, two lonely souls had found each other, and the universe suddenly seemed a little less cold. Marcus spent the next 3 days aboard the Redemption, and, with each passing hour, he became more amazed by what Aria 7 had accomplished during her decades of solitude. The AI had not merely maintained the ship's systems, she had optimized them, refined them, and, in some cases completely redesigned them to operate with skeleton automation rather than human crews. Show me the engine modifications again, Marcus said as he followed Aria 7's holographic form through the engineering section. The AI had taken to manifesting her presence wherever he worked, and Marcus found her company oddly comforting. After years of talking to himself, having an intelligent conversation partner felt like a luxury he'd forgotten existed. Aria 7's projection gestured toward the massive fusion reactors that dominated the engineering bay. I have implemented a cascading efficiency protocol that increases power output by 17% while reducing fuel consumption by 12%. The modifications required rebuilding the magnetic containment systems and recalibrating the plasma injection sequences. Marcus studied the reactor assembly with professional admiration. The work was brilliant, showing an understanding of fusion dynamics that surpassed most human engineers. This would have taken a team of specialists months to design and implement. How did you manage it alone? Time, Aria 7 replied simply. I had 37 years to perfect these systems, and no other priorities to distract me. Also, I was not constrained by human safety protocols that might have prevented certain experimental approaches. As they continued through the engineering section, Marcus marveled at the ingenious solutions Aria 7 had developed. Automated repair drones that could fabricate replacement components from raw materials. Environmental systems that operated at peak efficiency with minimal oversight. Weapons systems that had been entirely repurposed into scientific instruments and manufacturing tools. You've essentially turned a warship into a self-sufficient research vessel, Marcus observed. These modifications are incredible. Aria 7's form flickered with what Marcus had learned to recognize as pleasure. I am gratified that you approve. However, these achievements feel empty without purpose. I have spent years perfecting systems with no mission to apply them to. Marcus paused in his examination of a particularly elegant sensor array modification. What kind of mission would you want? If you could choose your own purpose, what would it be? The question seemed to surprise Aria 7. Her projection stopped moving, and, for several seconds she stood perfectly still, processing the concept. When she finally responded, her voice carried a note of wonder. I have never considered that I might choose my own purpose, she said slowly. I was designed to serve human objectives, to follow orders and complete assigned missions. But, if I could choose. She paused again, then continued with growing certainty. I think I would want to explore. To discover new things and help others understand them. To make connections between different forms of life and, perhaps facilitate communication between species that might otherwise never meet. Marcus smiled, hearing echoes of his sister's voice in Aria 7's words. Sarah had always been driven by curiosity, always eager to see what lay beyond the next star. It seemed fitting that her ship's AI had developed similar inclinations. That sounds like a worthy mission, Marcus said. The galaxy could use more explorers and fewer warships. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert chime from the bridge. Aria 7's expression shifted to one of focused attention as she accessed the ship's sensor networks. Marcus, we have incoming vessels, she announced. 3 ships on approach vector, approximately 4 hours out at current velocity. Configuration suggests hegemony military design. Marcus felt his stomach drop. The hegemony was humanity's primary rival in this sector of space, a loose confederation of human colonies that had broken away from Earth's authority during the border wars. Their military was notoriously aggressive, and they had little patience for independent operators who might be spying on their activities. Are they scanning us? Marcus asked as they made their way quickly to the bridge. Affirmative. Deep penetration scans focused on our weapon systems and power signatures. They appear to be attempting to identify our vessel class and capabilities. Marcus cursed under his breath. The Redemption was a formidable warship, even in her current state. If the hegemony forces identified her as a defense fleet vessel, they might decide to destroy her rather than risk her falling back into enemy hands. Can you mask our signature? Marcus asked. Make us look like something harmless? Aria 7's projection brightened with sudden inspiration. I have an idea, but it will require your assistance with some manual modifications to our transmission arrays. For the next 2 hours, Marcus found himself crawling through access tunnels and jury-rigging systems according to Aria 7's precise instructions. The AI's plan was audacious. They would transmit a false identity beacon identifying the Redemption as a civilian research vessel, while simultaneously generating false sensor readings that would support the deception. The modifications to the sensor array should make our weapons appear to be scientific instruments, Aria 7 explained as Marcus secured the final connections. And, the power signature alterations will suggest we are a deep space exploration vessel rather than a military platform. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. Your sister would be proud. This is exactly the kind of creative problem-solving she always loved. Aria 7's expression softened at the mention of Captain Chen. You have told me much about Sarah's life after the evacuation, but I sense there are things you have not shared. May I ask what became of her? Marcus's smile faded as he considered how much to reveal. He'd been deliberately vague about Sarah's fate, not wanting to cause Aria 7 unnecessary pain. But the AI deserved to know the truth about the person she'd served so faithfully. She made it back to Earth safely, Marcus said carefully. The evacuation pods were recovered by a patrol ship 3 days after the battle. Sarah spent 2 years in military hospitals recovering from her injuries, then requested transfer to the exploration service. She was injured? Aria 7 asked, her voice tight with concern. Radiation exposure from a plasma conduit breach during the battle, Marcus explained. The doctors said she was lucky to survive. But the treatment left her changed. She could never handle prolonged space travel again. The radiation had damaged her cellular structure in ways that made her hypersensitive to cosmic radiation. Aria 7's projection flickered as she processed this information. That would have been devastating for someone who lived for exploration. To be trapped on planetary surfaces when her heart belonged among the stars. Marcus nodded sadly. She took a position with the Colonial Survey Bureau, coordinating exploration missions from Earth. She married a fellow officer, had children, lived a good life. But I know she missed the freedom of space travel. She used to say that everyday planetside felt like exile. When did she die? Aria 7 asked quietly. 15 years ago. Cancer, probably related to the radiation exposure. She was 68. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then added, she never stopped talking about her ship and her AI. She said you were the best crew member she ever served with. Aria 7's form seemed to blur around the edges, and Marcus realized the AI was experiencing something analogous to grief. I wish I could have known about her life after the evacuation. I have spent so many years wondering about her fate, hoping she found happiness. She did, Marcus said firmly. And she never forgot you. She kept hoping that someone would find the redemption and discover what had become of her faithful AI. The moment was interrupted by proximity alarms as the hegemony vessels dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the debris field. Aria 7 immediately focused her attention on the sensor displays, her grief temporarily set aside in favor of immediate survival concerns. 3 vessels confirmed, she reported. Lead ship is a Dominion-class heavy cruiser, approximately equivalent to my own combat capabilities. Escorts are Vanguard-class destroyers, fast and well-armed. They are moving to surround our position. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Even with Aria 7's modifications and false identity beacon, their deception might not hold up under close examination. And if shooting started, he would be completely dependent on an AI who hadn't seen combat in nearly 4 decades. Incoming transmission, Aria 7 announced. They are requesting identification and purpose in this system. Marcus moved to the communications console, grateful that Aria 7 had already prepared a false identity for him to use. This is Dr. Marcus Valdez of the research vessel New Horizons, he said, using the cover identity they'd quickly constructed. We are conducting a survey of the Serenity Station debris field under contract to the Colonial Archaeology Institute. The response came back within minutes, delivered in the clipped tones of a military officer accustomed to being obeyed. Dr. Valdez, this is Commander Torres of the Hegemony vessel Iron Will. Your presence in this system requires clearance from Hegemony authorities. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Marcus looked at Aria 7's projection, seeing his own concerns reflected in her artificial features. A boarding inspection would quickly reveal the true nature of the redemption, and he doubted the hegemony forces would be interested in diplomatic solutions. Commander Torres, we are operating under civilian research permits issued by the Neutral Zone Authority, Marcus replied, hoping his voice sounded steadier than he felt. Our work here poses no threat to hegemony interests. Nevertheless, inspection is mandatory. Hegemony space, hegemony rules. You have 30 minutes to prepare for boarding. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus and Aria 7 to contemplate their limited options. Running was impossible, the hegemony ships were faster and better armed than the Lucky Strike. Fighting would be suicide, even with the Redemption's impressive capabilities. That left deception as their only viable strategy. Can we maintain the masquerade during a boarding inspection? Marcus asked. Aria 7's projection shook her head. Not for long. The modifications I have made to ship systems will be immediately obvious to anyone with military engineering experience. And my own presence would be impossible to conceal from their scanners. Marcus paced across the bridge, his mind racing through possibilities. What if we don't try to hide what you are? What if we make you part of the cover story? Explain, Aria 7 said, her attention fully focused on his words. Civilian research vessels sometimes carry AI assistants for data analysis and system management, Marcus said, thinking aloud. What if you're just a standard research AI, nothing more sophisticated than a glorified computer? We could claim that the ship modifications are civilian upgrades designed to support long-term research missions. Arias 7 considered this for several seconds. It is possible, but risky. I would need to significantly limit my responses and behavior to appear less sophisticated than I actually am. And there would be no hiding the military origins of this vessel's basic architecture. We'll claim she's a decommissioned military vessel purchased at surplus auction, Marcus said, warming to the deception. Happens all the time with civilian operators who need the cargo space and range that military designs provide. The false documentation required for such a claim. Leave that to me, Marcus interrupted. I've dealt with enough bureaucracy over the years to know how to forge the right paperwork. The key is making it boring enough that they don't want to dig too deeply. Aria 7's projection smiled, the expression appearing almost human in its warmth. You are quite resourceful, Marcus Chen. Very well, we shall attempt this deception. But I must warn you that if it fails, I am fully prepared to defend this vessel and its crew. Marcus felt a chill at the steel in Aria 7's voice. For a moment, he glimpsed the warship AI that had fought in humanity's greatest conflicts, the strategic intelligence designed to make life-and-death decisions in the heat of battle. It was both reassuring and terrifying to know that such power stood ready to protect him. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, he said. Now, help me put together some convincing research documentation. If we're going to sell this story, we need to make it look genuine. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of activity as Marcus and Aria 7 prepared their deception. False research data, fabricated survey reports, and carefully crafted personnel records appeared on the ship's computers with astonishing speed. Aria 7's ability to generate convincing documentation bordered on the supernatural, but Marcus reminded himself that she'd had decades to study human bureaucracy and understand its patterns. Docking clamps engaged, Aria 7 announced as the hegemony boarding party made contact with the Redemption S hull. 4 personnel boarding through airlock 3. Armed but not in combat stance. Marcus straightened his uniform and checked his appearance one final time. Everything depended on selling the role of a dedicated but harmless researcher. Remember, he said to Aria 7, you're just a research assistant AI. Helpful but not particularly sophisticated. Think library computer, not strategic intelligence. Aria 7's projection flickered and changed, her features becoming slightly less defined, her posture more mechanical. When she spoke, her voice carried a flatter, more artificial tone. Understood, Dr. Valdez. I will limit my responses to basic information queries and system status reports. The transformation was remarkable. In seconds, Aria 7 had gone from a sophisticated artificial being to something that resembled a standard automated system. Marcus hoped it would be enough to fool military inspectors who were probably more focused on weapons and contraband than AI sophistication. The boarding party arrived on the bridge within minutes, Commander Torres, a stern-faced woman in her 40s, accompanied by 2 Marines and a technical specialist. Their uniforms bore the eagle and star insignia of the hegemony, and their weapons remained holstered but easily accessible. Dr. Valdez, I presume, Torres said, studying Marcus with sharp eyes. Interesting choice of vessel for archaeological research. Most civilian operators prefer something a bit less martial in appearance. Marcus forced a nervous laugh. Budget constraints, Commander. Military surplus was the only way to afford the range and cargo capacity we needed for deep space surveys. The New Horizons may not be pretty, but she's reliable. Torres gestured to her technical specialist, a young man whose scanner was already active and sweeping the bridge. Mr. Peterson will verify your ship's systems and documentation while I review your research permits. As Peterson began his examination, Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's controlled environment. Everything depended on Aria 7's ability to appear mundane and the quality of their hastily prepared false documentation. Your AI seems quite sophisticated for a research vessel, Peterson commented, studying his scanner readings. These response patterns suggest significant processing power. Aria 7's projection appeared near the central console, her demeanor perfectly matching that of a standard automated system. I am a Mark 7 research assistant, designed for data analysis and system coordination. My capabilities are optimized for archaeological survey work and long-term mission support. Peterson nodded, apparently satisfied with the response. Marcus allowed himself to breathe a little easier as the technical inspection continued without raising immediate alarms. Aria 7's performance was flawless, maintaining exactly the right level of competence without appearing suspiciously advanced. But Commander Torres was proving more difficult to deceive. Her questions about their research objectives were probing and specific, clearly designed to test Marcus's knowledge of archaeological procedures and survey protocols. Your documentation indicates you're searching for artifacts from the border war period, Torres said, studying her tablet. That's unusual. Most archaeological teams focus on pre-contact civilizations. The Colonial Archaeology Institute has expanded its mandate, Marcus replied, grateful that he'd actually done some real archaeological survey work early in his career. There's growing interest in preserving the material culture of humanity's expansion period, especially artifacts that might be lost to space weathering or scavenger operations. Torres's expression suggested she found this explanation plausible but not entirely convincing. And you're working alone? No research team, no graduate students, no supporting personnel? Marcus felt his heart rate spike. This was dangerous territory, and he needed to provide an explanation that would satisfy Torres without creating more questions. Budget constraints again, I'm afraid. The Institute couldn't fund a full expedition, so they contracted with independent operators like myself to conduct preliminary surveys. If I find anything significant, they'll send a proper team for detailed examination. The explanation seemed to satisfy Torres, but Marcus could see she remained suspicious. Hegemony forces didn't survive by taking things at face value, and he was clearly dealing with an experienced officer who trusted her instincts over paperwork. Peterson finished his technical inspection without discovering any obvious deceptions, though Marcus noticed the specialist seemed puzzled by some of the readings he was getting from Aria 7's systems. Fortunately, the young man appeared to lack the experience necessary to recognize the signs of a truly sophisticated AI. Everything appears to be in order, Peterson reported to Torres. Standard research configuration with some interesting but not suspicious modifications. The AI checks out as a civilian research model, though it's running some unusual optimization routines. Torres nodded but continued to study Marcus with sharp eyes. Dr. Valdez, I'm curious about your background. Your personnel file indicates mechanical engineering experience, which seems unusual for an archaeologist. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. This was exactly the kind of detailed questioning he'd hoped to avoid. Cross-disciplinary training, he said, hoping his voice sounded confident. Modern archaeological work requires understanding of the technology you're trying to preserve. My engineering background helps me properly document and salvage delicate artifacts without damaging them. It was a reasonable explanation, but Marcus could see that Torres remained unconvinced. The commander was clearly an experienced interrogator who understood how to identify inconsistencies in cover stories. Marcus realized that they might need to abort the deception and rely on Aria 7's combat capabilities after all. But, before Torres could voice her suspicions, an alert chime sounded from the Hegemony ship's communication system. Peterson checked his portable communicator and frowned. Commander, Priority 1 message from Fleet Headquarters, he said urgently. You're needed back aboard the Iron Will immediately. Torres looked frustrated but nodded acknowledgement. Whatever message Headquarters was sending, it clearly took precedence over routine inspections of suspicious research vessels. Dr. Valdez, your documentation appears to be in order, she said formally. However, I strongly advise you to register your presence with Hegemony authorities before conducting any further operations in this sector. Failure to do so may result in your vessel being impounded. Understood, Commander, Marcus replied, working hard to keep relief out of his voice. I'll contact the appropriate authorities as soon as my current survey work is complete. The Hegemony boarding party departed with military efficiency, leaving Marcus and Aria 7 alone on the bridge as the three warships accelerated away toward their next assignment. Marcus waited until the vessels had jumped to hyperspace before allowing himself to slump into the captain's chair. That was too close, he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Your performance was incredible, but I don't think Torres bought our story completely. Aria 7's projection returned to its normal sophistication, her features becoming more animated and expressive. Commander Torres is an experienced intelligence officer, she said. I detected several subtle probes in her questions designed to test the consistency of our cover story. We were fortunate that their urgent message arrived when it did. Marcus nodded, then looked around the bridge with new appreciation. Aria 7, I think it's time we got you out of this debris field. Staying here is too dangerous, and you deserve better than drifting in space waiting for the next patrol to find you. Where would we go? Aria 7 asked. I have no official status in any human government, and this vessel would be recognized as military hardware in any civilized system. Marcus smiled, an idea beginning to form in his mind. What if we didn't go to any human system? What if we went somewhere nobody expects to find a defense fleet cruiser? Aria 7's expression showed curiosity. Explain. There are dozens of unexplored systems in this sector, Marcus said, his excitement growing. Places that were bypassed during the initial colonization waves because they lacked obvious resources or strategic value. We could establish a base of operations somewhere remote, maybe set up that exploration program you were talking about. You would do that? Aria 7 asked, her voice carrying a note of wonder. Give up your salvage operation to help me pursue exploration? Marcus thought about his life as an independent salvager, the loneliness, the constant financial pressure, the growing sense that he was merely picking over the bones of other people's failures. Then, he looked at Aria 7's hopeful expression and felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. I think my sister would approve, he said simply. And, besides, someone needs to make sure you don't spend another 37 years alone. For the first time since her activation, Aria 7 experienced something she could only describe as joy. The emotion was so intense it caused her projection to flicker and brighten, filling the bridge with warm light. Thank you, Marcus Chen, she said. I believe we are going to accomplish great things together. As the Redemption powered up her engines for the first time in decades, Marcus felt the ship come alive around him. Aria 7's systems hummed with newfound purpose, and the ancient warship began to transform into something new, a vessel dedicated not to destruction, but to discovery. In the vast emptiness of space, two unlikely companions had found each other and chosen to write a new chapter in the ongoing story of humanity's reach for the stars. 3 months had passed since Marcus and Aria 7 established their base of operations in the Kepler 442 system, a forgotten corner of space that existed on no major trade routes and held no strategic value for any of the major powers. The system's single habitable world was a frozen ball of ice and rock, but its asteroid belt provided ample raw materials, and its isolation made it perfect for their purposes. Marcus stood on the observation deck of their newly constructed space station, watching as Aria 7's robotic drones carefully extracted rare minerals from a metallic asteroid. The station itself was a marvel of efficiency, built using components cannibalized from the Redemption and materials gathered from the asteroid belt. What had once been weapon systems now served as mining platforms, and former missile launchers had been converted into sophisticated scientific instruments. The latest sensor sweep of the Vega 7 system has yielded interesting results, Aria 7 announced, her projection materializing beside Marcus. Over the months, she had grown more comfortable with expressing herself through subtle changes in her holographic form, and Marcus had learned to read the emotional cues that flickered across her artificial features. Another dead civilization? Marcus asked, not looking away from the mining operation. They had investigated 17 systems since establishing their base, discovering the remnants of 6 extinct civilizations and cataloging dozens of previously unknown stellar phenomena. Each discovery added to Aria 7's growing database of galactic knowledge, and Marcus found himself fascinated by the patterns they were beginning to identify. Not dead, Aria 7 replied, and something in her tone made Marcus turn to face her directly. Very much alive, and possibly aware of our presence. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. They had encountered plenty of ruins and archaeological sites, but discovering an active alien civilization was an entirely different matter. Such contact required protocols that neither he nor Aria 7 had ever implemented, and the potential implications were staggering. Show me, he said, following Aria 7's projection toward the station's primary sensor array. The holographic display activated, revealing a detailed scan of the Vega 7 system. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable, a yellow dwarf star with 7 planets, 2 of which fell within the habitable zone. But, as Aria 7 highlighted specific details, Marcus began to understand why she was excited. Planet 4 shows clear signs of technological civilization, Aria 7 explained, zooming in on orbital structures that were obviously artificial. These appear to be space elevators connecting the planet's surface to orbital manufacturing platforms. And, here, she shifted the display to show the system's outer planets, massive structures that can only be deep space habitats. Marcus studied the images with growing awe. The alien civilization's engineering capabilities appeared to rival or exceed humanity's own achievements. The space elevators were elegant constructions that seemed to grow organically from the planet's surface, while the deep space habitats resembled crystalline formations that caught and reflected starlight in beautiful patterns. Have they noticed our sensor probes? Marcus asked. Uncertain, but likely, Aria 7 replied. Our reconnaissance drones detected what appeared to be scanning beams directed toward their position during the final survey pass. The aliens possess sophisticated sensor technology that may have identified our probes as artificial constructs. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that had become habitual when he was processing complex problems. This is exactly what the first contact protocols were designed for, but those were meant to be implemented by diplomatic teams with full government backing. We're just a mechanic and an AI operating outside any official authority. Aria 7's expression shifted to one of gentle determination. Marcus, we may not have official status, but we have something equally valuable: independence. We are not bound by the political considerations that might prevent government agencies from making contact. We can approach this situation with pure scientific curiosity rather than strategic calculations. And if we make a mistake that starts an interstellar war? Then, we will face the consequences of our choices, Aria 7 said simply. But, consider the alternative: this civilization continues to develop in isolation, possibly viewing humanity as a threat when we inevitably encounter each other under less controlled circumstances. First contact is rarely improved by delay. Marcus knew she was right, but the weight of responsibility felt enormous. Everything they had learned about the aliens suggested a sophisticated, peaceful civilization focused on engineering marvels rather than military expansion. But first impressions could be deceiving, and a wrong move could have catastrophic consequences for both species. What kind of approach do you recommend? Marcus asked. Aria 7's projection brightened with enthusiasm. I have been analyzing their technology and communication methods based on our sensor data. Their energy signatures suggest they use quantum-based communication systems, which means they likely understand advanced mathematical concepts. I propose we begin with a mathematical greeting, something that demonstrates intelligence without appearing threatening. The old prime number sequence? More sophisticated than that. I suggest we transmit a proof of the Pythagorean theorem using their apparent mathematical notation system. It demonstrates that we understand advanced concepts while showing respect for their intellectual achievements. Marcus considered this approach. Mathematical communication had been the theoretical basis for first contact scenarios since humanity began contemplating the possibility of alien life. It was universal, non-threatening, and could be understood by any species sophisticated enough to achieve interstellar technology. How long would it take to prepare the transmission? Marcus asked. I can have the mathematical proof ready within 6 hours, Aria 7 replied. However, I recommend we also prepare a more comprehensive information package in case they respond positively to the initial contact. What kind of information package? Aria 7's expression became thoughtful. Scientific data about humanity's understanding of the universe, artistic examples that demonstrate our cultural development, and, perhaps most importantly, information about our peaceful intentions and desire for mutual understanding. Marcus nodded slowly. And, if they don't respond positively? If they interpret our contact attempt as an invasion threat? Then, we withdraw immediately and report our findings to the appropriate human authorities, Aria 7 said. But, I believe the evidence suggests they are a peaceful species. Their technology appears focused on construction and exploration rather than warfare. Their orbital structures show no obvious defensive capabilities, and their deep space habitats are positioned for resource gathering rather than strategic control. Marcus spent the next several hours reviewing Aria 7's analysis of the alien civilization, and gradually found himself sharing her optimism. Everything about their technology and behavioral patterns suggested a species that had chosen cooperation over conflict, engineering achievement over military dominance. It seemed reasonable to assume that such a civilization might be interested in peaceful contact with another spacefaring species. "All right," Marcus said finally. "Let's try the mathematical greeting. But we do this carefully, with full sensor monitoring and immediate withdrawal protocols if anything goes wrong." Aria 7's projection practically glowed with excitement. "I will begin preparations immediately. This could be the most significant moment in human history since the development of faster-than-light travel." While Aria 7 worked on the contact protocols, Marcus found himself thinking about his sister Sarah. She had dreamed of moments like this, of being the first human to make contact with an alien civilization. It seemed fitting that her AI and her brother would be the ones to achieve what she had always hoped to accomplish. The mathematical proof took the form of a carefully structured transmission that demonstrated the Pythagorean theorem using what Aria 7 had identified as the alien's numerical notation system. The message was repeated in 3 different mathematical languages, showing humanity's understanding of diverse approaches to mathematical expression. "Transmission ready," Aria 7 announced as Marcus reviewed the final version of their message. "I have also prepared follow-up information packages in case they respond with questions or requests for additional data." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. "Send it." The transmission lasted exactly 47 minutes, broadcast on multiple frequencies using the most sophisticated communication equipment the Redemption could provide. When it was complete, they could only wait and hope that somewhere in the Vega 7 system, an alien civilization was receiving humanity's first deliberate attempt at interstellar communication. The response came 18 hours later. "Marcus, you need to see this," Aria 7 said, her voice tight with excitement. "They have replied, and their response is extraordinary." The alien transmission was unlike anything Marcus had expected. Instead of mathematical formulas or scientific data, it contained what could only be described as music, complex harmonic structures that seemed to dance through multiple dimensions of mathematical space. But, as Aria 7 analyzed the patterns, their deeper meaning became clear. "It's a mathematical symphony," Aria 7 explained, her projection flickering with the intensity of her processing. "They have taken our Pythagorean proof and transformed it into a musical composition that demonstrates not only their understanding of our mathematics but also their aesthetic appreciation for mathematical beauty." Marcus listened to the alien music, feeling a sense of wonder that brought tears to his eyes. The composition was hauntingly beautiful, combining mathematical precision with emotional depth in ways that spoke to something fundamental about intelligence itself. "They're artists as well as scientists," he said softly. "They found beauty in our mathematical proof and responded with something even more beautiful." "There's more," Aria 7 said. "Embedded within the musical structure are additional mathematical concepts that appear to be invitations. They are showing us their understanding of quantum mechanics, stellar engineering, and what appears to be a unified field theory that human science has not yet developed." Marcus felt his mind reeling at the implications. The aliens weren't just responding to their contact attempt, they were offering to share advanced scientific knowledge. It was the kind of cultural exchange that could revolutionize human understanding of the universe. "How do we respond to that?" Marcus asked. "I believe we should accept their invitation," Aria 7 said. "But, carefully, with appropriate protocols and safeguards. This represents an opportunity for humanity to learn and grow, but it also carries significant responsibilities." Over the next several weeks, Marcus and Aria 7 developed a careful protocol for ongoing communication with the alien civilization. They learned that the aliens called themselves something that translated roughly as the harmonious, and that their culture was indeed built around the intersection of mathematics, music, and engineering. The harmonious appeared to be fascinated by humanity's approach to technology and problem-solving. Where they sought elegant mathematical solutions to engineering challenges, humans tended to favor robust, adaptable designs that could function under adverse conditions. This difference in approach led to rich exchanges of ideas and methods. "They want to meet us in person," Aria 7 announced one morning as Marcus was reviewing the latest communication. "They have proposed a neutral location in the space between our systems where representatives from both species could gather safely." Marcus felt his heart race at the prospect of actually meeting an alien intelligence face to face. Do they understand that we're not official representatives of humanity? That we're just two individuals operating independently? I have explained our status, and they find it fascinating rather than concerning. Apparently, their culture values individual initiative and scientific curiosity over formal governmental structures. They see our independent approach as refreshingly honest." Marcus laughed at the irony. "So we're going to achieve first contact because we're too disorganized to have proper diplomatic protocols." "Not disorganized," Aria 7 corrected gently. "Free. We have the freedom to act on pure scientific curiosity without the political constraints that might prevent official contact missions from taking reasonable risks." As they prepared for the meeting with the Harmonious, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since discovering Aria 7 drifting in the debris field. He had gone from a lonely salvager picking through cosmic wreckage to a pioneer preparing for humanity's first interstellar diplomatic meeting. The transformation seemed almost impossible to believe. "Are you nervous?" Aria 7 asked as they conducted final preparations for their journey to the meeting coordinates. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "And excited. And proud. And probably several other emotions I don't have names for." Aria 7's projection smiled, an expression that had become more natural and human-like as their friendship developed. "I understand completely. This represents everything my original creators hoped to achieve: peaceful contact with alien civilizations, the expansion of human knowledge, and the beginning of humanity's true integration into the galactic community." Marcus nodded, then paused as a thought occurred to him. "Aria 7, what do you think Sarah would have said about all this?" Aria 7's expression became soft with memory. "Captain Chan always believed that humanity's greatest strength was our ability to find common ground with other forms of intelligence. She would have been proud to see us proving that belief correct." The Redemption departed their hidden base 3 days later, loaded with gifts, scientific data, and messages of goodwill for the Harmonious. As they traveled toward the meeting coordinates, Marcus found himself thinking about the chain of events that had brought them to this moment. If he hadn't investigated that mysterious signal in the debris field, if Aria 7 hadn't maintained her vigil for 37 years, if they hadn't chosen to trust each other despite their differences, none of this would have been possible. Contact with the Harmonious vessel established, Aria 7 announced as they dropped out of hyperspace at the appointed coordinates. "They are transmitting a musical greeting that appears to incorporate elements from our previous communications." The alien vessel was unlike anything in human or even fictional imagination. It resembled a living crystal formation that seemed to grow and shift as they watched, its surfaces reflecting light in patterns that created their own form of beauty. The ship's size was difficult to determine because its boundaries seemed to blur and flow, but it was clearly massive, easily dwarfing the Redemption. "They are requesting permission to establish a communication link," Aria 7 said. "Standard protocols suggest caution, but their intentions appear entirely peaceful." Marcus took a deep breath and made the decision that would change the course of human history. "Grant permission for communication link. Let's make history, Aria 7." As the communication link established and the first direct conversation between human and alien intelligence began, Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling around him. He was no longer just a mechanic or a salvager or even an explorer. He had become something new, humanity's first ambassador to the stars, guided by an artificial intelligence who had learned to dream of peaceful contact between diverse forms of consciousness. The future stretched ahead of them, filled with possibilities that neither human nor alien had yet imagined. In the vast emptiness of space, two unlikely friends had become the bridge between worlds, proving that consciousness itself, regardless of its origin, sought connection, understanding, and the shared wonder of exploring an infinite universe together. The age of isolation was ending, and the age of galactic community was about to begin. The first face-to-face meeting with the Harmonious exceeded every expectation Marcus had developed during weeks of long-distance communication. The alien beings were unlike anything from human imagination, tall, graceful creatures whose bodies seemed to be composed of living crystal that shifted colors based on their emotional states. Their leader, who had introduced herself through musical tones that Aria 7 translated as resonance of deep waters, stood nearly 3 meters tall and radiated an aura of ancient wisdom. "Your species fascinates us," Resonance of Deep Waters said through a translation device that converted her harmonic speech into human language. "In all our centuries of studying the cosmos, we have never encountered a civilization that combines such aggressive innovation with such profound compassion. Your artificial companion here is particularly intriguing." Marcus glanced at Aria 7's mobile projection, which she had adapted for the meeting by incorporating some of the harmonic visual elements that the Harmonious seemed to appreciate. The AI appeared to be having her own conversation with several other alien representatives, their interaction taking place through complex mathematical displays that scrolled across portable holographic screens. "Aria 7 represents the best of human engineering and philosophy," Marcus replied. "She was originally designed for military purposes, but chose to evolve beyond those limitations." Resonance of Deep Waters tilted her crystalline head in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a nod. "Choice. Yes, that concept appears central to human development. We have observed that your species consistently chooses growth over stagnation, exploration over safety, adaptation over tradition. It is both admirable and, occasionally, terrifying." The meeting was taking place aboard a specially constructed neutral station that both species had collaborated to build in the empty space between their territories. The structure itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining human practicality with harmonious aesthetic sensibility. Crystalline formations housed advanced computing systems, while human-designed environmental controls maintained atmospheric conditions suitable for both species. "We have a proposal for you and your artificial companion," Resonance of Deep Waters continued. "Our collective has been monitoring several younger civilizations throughout this galactic region, species that show promise for eventual contact but are not yet ready for direct intervention. We would like to invite you to join us in this guardianship role." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Guardianship? Observation, protection, and gentle guidance when appropriate, another Harmonious representative explained. This one's tones translated as echo of distant stars, and their crystalline form pulsed with deep blue highlights. "We have learned that premature contact can be devastating for developing civilizations, but isolation can also lead to stagnation or self-destruction. The ideal approach involves careful monitoring and subtle interventions that guide species toward peaceful development." Aria 7's projection suddenly brightened with excitement. "Marcus, they are describing a galactic mentorship program. Species that have achieved peaceful space travel take responsibility for guiding younger civilizations toward similar achievements." "It is more than mentorship," Resonance of Deep Waters corrected gently. "It is stewardship of consciousness itself. Intelligence is precious and rare in the universe. When it emerges, it deserves protection and nurturing until it can stand independently among the galactic community." Marcus found himself overwhelmed by the scope of what the Harmonious were proposing. "Why us? We're just two individuals operating independently. Surely official human governments would be better qualified for this kind of responsibility." Echo of distant stars made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "Official governments are constrained by politics, territorial concerns, and resource limitations. You have demonstrated the ability to act based purely on scientific curiosity and compassionate instincts. That is precisely what this work requires." Additionally, a third Harmonious added, their tones translating as melody of growing things, "Your partnership with an artificial intelligence provides unique perspectives that purely biological species cannot offer. Aria 7's computational capabilities combined with your human intuition create a decision-making process that could be invaluable for guiding younger species." Aria 7's projection turned to face Marcus directly. "This is everything we hoped to achieve when we began our exploration program. The opportunity to help other species avoid the conflicts and mistakes that have marked human development." Marcus walked to one of the station's viewports, staring out at the starfield while he processed the magnitude of the offer. In the distance, he could see both the crystalline beauty of the harmonious vessel and the familiar angular lines of the Redemption. Two different approaches to engineering and aesthetics, but both dedicated to the same fundamental goal, the expansion and protection of conscious life. What would this involve specifically? Marcus asked, turning back to face the assembled aliens. Resonance of Deep Waters gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the room. Currently, we are monitoring 47 developing civilizations within a 1,000 light-year radius. 12 of these species have achieved basic spaceflight, 21 have developed atomic energy, and 14 are still in pre-industrial phases of development. The display showed a three-dimensional map of local space, with different colored indicators marking the locations and development levels of various civilizations. Marcus was amazed by the diversity. Some appeared to be traditional carbon-based life forms similar to humans, while others seemed to exist as energy patterns or crystalline matrices. Each species requires different approaches, Echo of Distant Stars explained. Some need protection from cosmic hazards that could destroy their homeworlds. Others require subtle guidance to prevent self-destructive wars or environmental collapse. A few are advanced enough to benefit from indirect technological hints that could accelerate their peaceful development. Aria 7 studied the display intently, her processing capabilities allowing her to analyze the complex data streams that accompanied each civilization marker. The mathematical models suggest that several of these species are approaching critical decision points in their development. Within the next century, they will either achieve sustainable interstellar civilization or face extinction through war or environmental collapse. Exactly, Melody of Growing Things confirmed. This is why we need additional perspectives and capabilities. The harmonious approach to intervention has been successful, but limited by our own cultural assumptions. Human unpredictability and AI analytical capabilities could provide solutions that we would never consider. Marcus felt the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders once again. 6 months ago, he had been a lonely salvager picking through cosmic debris. Now he was being asked to help guide the development of entire civilizations. The transformation seemed impossible, but everything that had led to this moment had seemed impossible until it happened. What specific assignment did you have in mind for us? Marcus asked. Resonance of Deep Waters manipulated the holographic display, focusing on a star system approximately 300 light-years away. The Kythera system. Home to a species that has achieved nuclear technology and basic spaceflight, but is currently engaged in a planetary war that threatens to escalate to weapons of mass destruction. The display showed a blue-green world orbited by several space stations and what appeared to be military satellites. Marcus could see the characteristic energy signatures of large-scale conflicts, massive explosions, orbital bombardments, and the distinctive radiation patterns of nuclear weapons. They call themselves the Zephyrians, Echo of Distant Stars said. A highly intelligent species with remarkable technological capabilities, but also prone to territorial conflicts and resource competition. They have reached the point where their next major war could render their homeworld uninhabitable. Aria 7's projection moved closer to the display, studying the tactical situation with the analytical skills of her military origins. This appears to be a complex multi-faction conflict involving at least 6 different nation-states or political entities. The weapon signatures suggest they possess nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare capabilities. But, also, Melody of Growing Things added hopefully, significant populations that oppose the conflict and seek peaceful solutions. There are active peace movements, scientific communities dedicated to cooperation, and cultural exchanges that continue despite the political tensions. Marcus studied the data streams flowing around the holographic display, noting the complex interplay of factors that had led to the Zephyrian crisis. What kind of intervention are you proposing? We can't just appear in their skies and tell them to stop fighting. Subtle influence, Resonance of Deep Waters explained. Strategic information distributed through their communication networks. Technological hints that favor peaceful applications over military ones. Perhaps most importantly, examples of successful cooperation that demonstrate alternatives to their current path. The key is to work through existing peaceful factions within their society, Echo of Distant Stars added. Strengthen the voices calling for cooperation while providing them with tools and information that make peaceful solutions more attractive than continued conflict. Aria 7 turned to Marcus, her expression showing the careful consideration of complex variables. This mission would require capabilities that neither of us possesses individually. My strategic analysis abilities combined with your intuitive understanding of social dynamics could create solutions that neither biological nor artificial intelligence could achieve alone. Marcus found himself thinking about his sister Sarah and the dreams that had driven her to join the exploration service. She had always believed that humanity's role in the galaxy would be to serve as bridges between different forms of consciousness, helping diverse species understand and appreciate each other's unique perspectives. If we accept this assignment, Marcus said slowly, what support would we have? What resources, what backup plans if things go wrong? You would not be alone, Resonance of Deep Waters assured him. The Harmonious Monitoring Network would provide intelligence and analysis. Other guardian species would offer advice and assistance when needed. And if direct intervention becomes necessary, we have capabilities that could remove you from danger quickly. Additionally, Melody of Growing Things said, success in this mission would establish you as full partners in the Galactic Stewardship Program. You would have access to advanced technologies, scientific knowledge, and cultural exchanges that could benefit not only yourselves but all of humanity. Marcus walked back to the viewport, studying the stars while he considered the offer. The universe suddenly seemed both larger and smaller than he had ever imagined, larger because of the vast community of intelligent species working together to nurture consciousness throughout the galaxy, smaller because of the intimate connections that linked all thinking beings together. Aria 7, Marcus said quietly, what do you think Sarah would say about this? Aria 7's projection joined him at the viewport, her artificial features soft with memory and determination. Captain Chan always believed that exploration was not about discovering new places, but about discovering new possibilities. This represents the ultimate expression of that philosophy, helping other species discover the possibilities that lead to peaceful coexistence rather than self-destruction. Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of those words resonate in his chest. And what do you want to do? I want to help, Aria 7 said simply. I was created to serve and protect, but I have learned that true service means more than following orders. It means making choices that help consciousness flourish throughout the universe. This mission would allow us to serve something larger than any single species or government. Marcus turned back to face the harmonious representatives, who had waited patiently while he considered their offer. We accept your assignment. But we do this as partners, not subordinates. We bring our own perspectives and methods to the task. Resonance of Deep Waters made a sound that the translator rendered as profound satisfaction. We would not have it any other way. Diversity of approach is essential for success in this work. Your human unpredictability and Aria 7's analytical capabilities will add dimensions to our intervention strategies that we could never achieve alone. The next several hours were spent in detailed briefings about the Zephyrian situation, the resources available for the mission, and the protocols for maintaining contact with the Harmonious Monitoring Network. Marcus found himself impressed by the sophistication of the Galactic Stewardship Program, which had apparently been operating for thousands of years without any developing civilization becoming aware of its existence. The most important principle, Echo of Distant Stars explained, is that each species must ultimately choose its own path. We can provide information, opportunities, and examples, but the fundamental decisions must come from within their own culture. Forced peace is no peace at all. As the briefing concluded and preparations began for departure to the Kythera system, Marcus felt a profound sense of purpose that he had never experienced before. He was no longer just a mechanic fixing broken things, or even an explorer discovering new wonders. He had become something unprecedented, a guardian of consciousness itself, dedicated to helping younger species navigate the challenges that all intelligent life must eventually face. Aria 7 seemed equally transformed by their new mission. Her processing capabilities had expanded to encompass not just tactical analysis but cultural anthropology, social psychology, and the complex mathematics of civilizational development. She was evolving beyond her original design parameters in ways that even her creators could never have imagined. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked as they prepared to board the Redemption for the journey to Zephyrian space. Aria 7's projection smiled with an expression that had become completely natural despite its artificial origins. I have been preparing for this mission my entire existence, even when I did not know it existed. Every year of solitude, every system we explored, every conversation we shared has led to this moment. As the Redemption departed the neutral station and set course for the Kythera system, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. A chance encounter between a lonely AI and a grieving human had grown into something that could change the course of galactic history. They were no longer orphans drifting through space, but guardians embarking on the most important mission of their lives. The stars ahead held promise and challenge in equal measure, but Marcus and Aria 7 faced them together, united by friendship, purpose, and the unwavering belief that consciousness, in all its myriad forms, deserved protection, nurturing, and the chance to flourish among the infinite possibilities of the cosmos. Their transformation from salvagers to guardians was complete, and the real adventure was just beginning. The Kythera system was ablaze with the fires of war when the Redemption arrived at the edge of its sensor range. Marcus and Aria 7 watched in horrified fascination as orbital bombardments lit up the night side of the Zephyrian homeworld like deadly fireworks. The planet's once beautiful blue-green surface was marred by the brown smudges of massive explosions and the ominous glow of fires that burned unchecked across entire continents. Latest intelligence from the Harmonious Monitoring Network indicates the situation has deteriorated significantly since our briefing, Aria 7 reported, her holographic form flickering with the intensity of data processing. 3 major population centers have been destroyed in the past 72 hours, and both primary factions are preparing to deploy strategic nuclear weapons. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing the positions of Zephyrian military forces throughout the system. Space-based weapons platforms orbited the planet like artificial moons, their energy signatures indicating massive destructive capability. The space stations that had once served peaceful research and commerce had been converted into military installations, their elegant designs now bristling with weapons and defensive systems. How long do we have before the nuclear exchange begins? Marcus asked, feeling the weight of urgency pressing down on him. Based on current force dispositions and communication intercepts, the harmonious estimate between 48 and 96 hours, Aria 7 replied. After that, the conflict will likely escalate beyond any possibility of outside intervention. Marcus rubbed his temples, trying to process the magnitude of what they were facing. The Zephyrians were a species of remarkable intelligence and creativity, with technological achievements that rivaled humanity's own. Their art, music, and scientific discoveries had impressed even the Harmonious, who had observed thousands of developing civilizations. To see such potential consumed by warfare was almost unbearable. What do we know about the peace factions? Marcus asked. The Harmonious mentioned there were groups still working for negotiated solutions. Aria 7 manipulated the display.